A millionaire is about to take a medicine prescribed by his own daughter, unaware of the danger that surrounds him. A poor boy breaks the silence and whispers, "Don't take the medicine your daughter is going to give you." Tension explodes when the millionaire begins to suspect his own family's intentions, and what he discovers next changes his view of trust and betrayal forever. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The Manhattan skyline glittered like a crown of glass and steel against the fading twilight. From the 87th floor of the Miller Tower, Robert Miller surveyed his kingdom with the practiced eye of a conqueror. At 72, he still carried himself with the ramrod posture of someone who had never doubted his place in the world. His silver hair, immaculately styled, caught the last rays of sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office. "Mr. Miller, your daughter is here to see you." His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Robert pressed the button without taking his eyes off the cityscape. "Send her in, Denise." The double doors opened with a soft whoosh, and Caroline Miller strode in, her Louboutin heels clicking authoritatively against the marble floor. At 39, Caroline was the spitting image of ambition refined to its purest form. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a severe bun, her navy blue power suit tailored to perfection, and her expression carefully calculated to reveal nothing but cool competence. "Dad," she said, the word sounding more like a business greeting than a term of endearment. "The board is waiting for us downstairs." Robert turned, his steel blue eyes meeting his daughter's identical ones. "I'm aware of the time, Caroline." He reached for the folder on his desk but fumbled, sending papers cascading to the floor. For a moment, confusion clouded his features, a brief, alarming crack in his usually impenetrable facade. Caroline moved swiftly, gathering the documents. "Are you feeling all right?" Her voice contained just the right amount of concern. Not too much to suggest weakness, not too little to seem callous. "Just tired," Robert muttered, pressing his fingers against his temples. "These headaches have been getting worse." "You should see Dr. Harrison again," Caroline suggested, arranging the papers with efficient precision. "Let me schedule an appointment for tomorrow." "I don't need a doctor," Robert snapped, snatching the folder from her hands. "I need people to stop treating me like I'm becoming senile." Caroline's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Calculation, perhaps, or opportunity recognized. "No one thinks that, Dad, but your health comes first. The company needs you at your best." Robert straightened his tie, a gesture of reassertion. "The company has survived worse than a few headaches. Let's not keep the board waiting." As they rode the private elevator down to the conference room, Robert found himself gripping the handrail more tightly than usual. The subtle tremor in his right hand hadn't escaped Caroline's notice. Nothing ever did. The board meeting proceeded, as they always had for the past 30 years, Robert dominating the room with his presence, making decisions with the conviction of someone who had built Miller Enterprises from a small real estate firm into a diversified conglomerate worth billions. But today something was different. Twice he lost his train of thought mid-sentence. Once he called the CFO by the wrong name. Caroline smoothly covered for him each time, finishing his sentences, correcting his mistakes with such grace that few noticed. But Robert noticed, and so did Walter Green, his oldest friend and the company's COO, whose concerned glances spoke volumes across the polished mahogany table. After the meeting, Walter followed Robert back to his office. "Rob, what's going on with you? And don't give me that just tired nonsense you've been feeding everyone else." Robert collapsed into his leather chair, suddenly looking every one of his 72 years. "I don't know, Walt. These episodes, they're getting more frequent. One minute I'm sharp as ever, the next I'm struggling to remember the name of someone I've known for decades." Walter's weathered face creased with worry. "Have you been checked for everything?" Robert interrupted. "Blood work, brain scans, the works, they can't find anything definitive. Dr. Harrison suggests stress or early signs of age-related cognitive decline." "And what does Caroline think?" Robert's expression hardened. "Caroline thinks she should start taking over more of my responsibilities. For my own good, she says." Walter nodded slowly. She's always been ambitious. Ambitious doesn't begin to cover it, Robert said, a hint of pride mixing with something darker in his voice. I raised her to be a shark in this ocean of mediocrity. I just never expected to start looking like prey in her eyes. The sun had fully set now, leaving the office illuminated only by the city lights and the soft glow of the desk lamp. Shadows played across Robert's face, emphasizing the deep lines, etched by decades of high-stakes decisions and ruthless business maneuvers. You created her in your image, Rob, Walter said gently. You can't blame her for becoming exactly what you taught her to be. Robert stared out at the city that had bent to his will for so long. I taught her to be strong, not cold. To be determined, not merciless, he sighed. But maybe there's no difference when you're building an empire. Later that evening, as Robert's driver navigated the sleek black Bentley through Manhattan's crowded streets toward his Upper East Side penthouse, he found himself struggling to focus on the quarterly reports in his lap. The words swam before his eyes, rearranging themselves into meaningless patterns. A wave of dizziness washed over him, accompanied by a metallic taste in his mouth. James, he called to his driver, stop at the nearest pharmacy. I need something for this headache. At home, the 5,000 square foot penthouse felt emptier than usual. Robert had lived alone since his wife Diana's passing from cancer 12 years ago. Caroline had her own luxury condo 20 blocks south, though she kept a suite of rooms at her father's place for late nights or impromptu business discussions. Robert shuffled to his bedroom, swallowing the pills with a glass of water. As he changed into his silk pajamas, he caught sight of his reflection in the full-length mirror. The powerful frame that had once intimidated boardrooms was beginning to stoop. The commanding presence that had closed billion-dollar deals was flickering like a bulb about to burn out. What's happening to me? He whispered to his reflection, which offered no answers. The next morning, Robert woke to find Caroline sitting at the foot of his bed, scrolling through emails on her tablet. She was already dressed for the office, though it was barely 6:30 a.m. How long have you been here? He asked, his voice rough with sleep. About an hour, she replied without looking up. You were having nightmares again, talking in your sleep. Robert pushed himself up against the pillows, fighting another wave of dizziness. What was I saying? Caroline finally met his gaze, her expression unreadable. Nothing important, just nonsense. She stood, smoothing her skirt. I've taken the liberty of clearing your schedule today. Dr. Harrison will be here at 9 for a house call. I told you I don't need... You do, she cut him off, her tone leaving no room for argument. The Mitchell acquisition is in its final stages. We can't afford any incidents. Robert wanted to remind her who still owned the controlling interest in the company, who had made her what she was, but the words dissolved on his tongue like sugar in hot coffee. Instead, he simply nodded. Caroline's features softened almost imperceptibly. I'm doing this for you, Dad, for your legacy. She leaned down and pressed a cool kiss to his forehead. Everything I do is to protect what you've built. As she walked out, her phone chimed with a message. Caroline glanced at it, then quickened her pace, closing the bedroom door firmly behind her. Through the crack, Robert could hear her voice, low and urgent, as she answered a call. Yes, I understand. The situation is becoming more complicated. We may need to accelerate our timeline. Robert stared at the closed door, a chill running down his spine that had nothing to do with his mysterious ailment. The Harlem Community Outreach Center buzzed with activity as Sarah Thompson, the center's director, reviewed applications for their employment program. At 45, Sarah carried herself with the quiet dignity of someone who had weathered life's storms and emerged stronger. Her dark hair was streaked with premature gray, and laugh lines framed her warm brown eyes, evidence of a woman who found joy even in difficult circumstances. Ms. Thompson? A young man hovered in the doorway of her cluttered office. The new group is here for orientation. Sarah looked up from her desk, which was buried under grant proposals and program schedules. Thanks, Dwayne. I'll be right there. As she gathered her materials, Sarah's gaze fell on a newspaper clipping pinned to her bulletin board. The headline read, Miller Enterprises announces restructuring, hundreds of positions eliminated. Her expression hardened momentarily before she tucked the memory away, focusing instead on the day ahead. In the center's main hall, 20 young adults sat in folding chairs, their expressions ranging from hopeful to skeptical. Among them was Jason Reynolds, a lean 23-year-old with intelligent eyes and a wary demeanor. Unlike the others who fidgeted or chatted nervously, Jason sat perfectly still, observing everything with the hyper-awareness of someone who had learned to anticipate danger. "Good morning, everyone," Sarah began, her voice warm but authoritative. "Welcome to the Bridge to Employment program. I'm Sarah Thompson, the director here at Harlem Community Outreach." As she outlined the program, job training, interview preparation, placement assistance, Jason's attention remained unwavering. When Sarah mentioned their corporate partners, including Miller Enterprises, a flicker of recognition crossed his face. After the orientation, as the others filed out, Jason approached Sarah. "Ms. Thompson, I wanted to thank you for the opportunity." Sarah smiled. "You can thank me by making the most of it, Jason." "I will," he promised. I noticed you mentioned Miller Enterprises. I've heard they're tough to work for." Sarah's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Every workplace has its challenges, but Miller offers good entry-level positions with advancement potential. That's rare these days." Jason nodded, processing her careful response. "I understand. I'm grateful for any opportunity." Sarah studied him, recognizing something familiar in his cautious optimism. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" Jason's posture stiffened. "No more than anyone else here." "Maybe," Sarah conceded, "but not everyone develops your level of awareness. It takes certain experiences to create that kind of vigilance." For a moment, Jason's carefully maintained facade cracked, revealing a glimpse of raw vulnerability. Then it was gone, replaced by a polite smile. "I should go prepare for tomorrow's workshop. Thank you again, Ms. Thompson." As Jason left, Sarah found herself hoping Miller Enterprises would be different for him than it had been for her. Across town, Caroline Miller paced, the floor of her penthouse office, phone pressed to her ear. "I don't care what it takes, Doctor. Find something that works faster without being detectable." On the other end of the line, Dr. Matthew Preston sighed. "Caroline, we've been over this. The current regimen is already pushing the boundaries of what's safe. Any more aggressive and we risk permanent damage or—" "I'm not paying you for excuses," Caroline cut in, her voice glacial. "My father is still having moments of clarity that are inconvenient. The Mitchell acquisition closes in 3 weeks. I need him compliant by then." "The human brain isn't a light switch, Caroline. Your father's remarkable constitution is fighting the effects. If you want him to sign over control without raising suspicions, patience is our best strategy." Caroline stopped at her window, gazing out at the city her father had taught her to conquer. 3 weeks, Doctor. Make it happen." She ended the call and turned to the man sitting silently on her couch. Michael Foster, her father's personal assistant for the past year, watched her with calculating eyes. "How is he today?" Caroline asked. Michael's lips curved into a cold smile. "Confused, agitated. The new combination in his morning coffee worked well. He tried to fire me twice before lunch, then couldn't remember doing it." Caroline nodded, satisfaction evident in her posture. "And the board members? Most are concerned about his health, but too afraid to mention it directly. Walters remains loyal, though. He's been suggesting your father seek a second opinion." Caroline's expression darkened. "Walter has outlived his usefulness. Once the acquisition closes, we'll accelerate his retirement plans." Michael stood, closing the distance between them with practiced ease. At 35, he combined the sharp mind of a strategist with the ruthless ambition that had initially attracted Caroline. Their relationship, begun as a calculated alliance, had evolved into something more complex. Not quite love, but a powerful recognition of kindred spirits. "You're so close now," he murmured, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Everything you've worked for, everything you deserve." Caroline leaned into his touch, allowing herself a rare moment of vulnerability. "He never saw me, Michael. No matter what I achieved, it was never enough. I was never enough." 25. Years earlier, 10-year-old Caroline had stood in the doorway of her father's home office, report card clutched in her small hands. Straight A's, the teacher's comments glowing with praise. "Daddy," she'd called, excitement bubbling in her chest. "Look what I got." Robert had barely glanced up from his paperwork. "That's nice, sweetheart, just put it on my desk." "But don't you want to see Ms. Abernathy says I'm the best student she's had in 15 years of teaching?" Robert had sighed, checking his watch. "Caroline, I'm in the middle of a crucial deal. We'll discuss your grades later." Later never came. Neither did acknowledgement of her debate team victories, her early admission to Yale, or her MBA from Harvard. Each achievement was met with the same response: a distracted nod, a perfunctory "good job," and the implicit message that it was simply expected, not exceptional. In the present, Caroline pulled away from Michael, composure reinstated. "We're not doing this for validation. We're doing it because he's losing his edge. The company needs new leadership." Michael smiled, recognizing the lie, but respecting her need for it. "Of course, it's just business." Across the city, Robert Miller sat in his private doctor's office, frustration evident in every line of his body. "I'm telling you, James, something isn't right," he insisted, using the familiar address that 30 years of friendship had earned Dr. James Harrison. "These aren't normal symptoms of aging." Dr. Harrison, a distinguished man in his late 60s, studied his oldest friend with concern. "Your tests show some unusual patterns, Rob, but nothing conclusive. The symptoms you're describing, confusion, memory lapses, dizziness, could be stress-related or early cognitive decline, or something else entirely," Robert muttered. "Have you tested for unusual substances, toxins, something that wouldn't show up in standard panels?" Dr. Harrison frowned. "You think you're being poisoned? Rob, that's paranoid, is it?" Robert leaned forward, lowering his voice despite being in a private room. 3 months ago, I was in perfect health. I could quote financial reports from memory, work 16-hour days without fatigue. Now, I can barely get through a board meeting without Caroline covering for me." "Speaking of Caroline," Dr. Harrison said carefully, "she's been quite concerned. She calls me almost daily for updates on your condition." Robert's eyes narrowed. "Does she? And what exactly does she want to know?" "Standard things: your prognosis, treatment options, how to manage your care, and how to manage my company while I'm incapacitated," Robert added bitterly. Dr. Harrison sighed. "Rob, I've known you. Both for decades. Caroline is ambitious, yes, but she's your daughter. She loves you." Robert stared out the window, doubt etching lines in his weathered face. "Does she? Or does she love what I've built? What she stands to inherit?" "Those are dark thoughts, old friend." "Dark times breed dark thoughts, James." Robert stood, straightening his suit jacket with deliberate precision. "Run those additional tests, quietly, and don't mention them to Caroline." Dr. Harrison hesitated before nodding. "I'll be discreet. But Rob, consider this. If I find nothing, will you accept that perhaps your suspicions are unfounded?" Robert's expression was grim. "If you find nothing, James, it only means we haven't looked in the right places yet." As Robert's driver helped him into the back of the Bentley, he felt the familiar fog descending over his mind, the confusion that had become his unwelcome companion. He gripped his leather portfolio tightly, anchoring himself to reality as the city blurred outside his window. "Where to, sir?" the driver asked. For a terrifying moment, Robert couldn't remember his own address. Panic rose in his throat as he searched his fragmenting mind for the information that should be automatic. "Sir?" the driver prompted again, concern evident in his voice. "Home," Robert managed, the word feeling foreign on his tongue. "Take me home." As the car pulled into traffic, Robert closed his eyes, fighting against the fog. Something was wrong. Something beyond age or stress or ordinary illness. And somehow, deep in his heart, He knew that the answer to his mysterious decline was closer than anyone suspected. The Harlem Community Outreach Center buzzed with activity as Sarah Thompson, the center's director, reviewed applications for their employment program. At 45, Sarah carried herself with the quiet dignity of someone who had weathered life's storms and emerged stronger. Her dark hair was streaked with premature gray, and laugh lines framed her warm brown eyes, evidence of a woman who found joy even in difficult circumstances. "Ms. Thompson?" A young man hovered in the doorway of her cluttered office. "The new group is here for orientation." Sarah looked up from her desk, which was buried under grant proposals and program schedules. "Thanks, Dwayne. I'll be right there." As she gathered her materials, Sarah's gaze fell on a newspaper clipping pinned to her bulletin board. The headline read, "Miller Enterprises announces restructuring. Hundreds of positions eliminated." Her expression hardened momentarily before she tucked the memory away, focusing instead on the day ahead. In the center's main hall, 20 young adults sat in folding chairs, their expressions ranging from hopeful to skeptical. Among them was Jason Reynolds, a lean 23-year-old with intelligent eyes and a wary demeanor. Unlike the others who fidgeted or chatted nervously, Jason sat perfectly still, observing everything with the hyper-awareness of someone who had learned to anticipate danger. "Good morning, everyone," Sarah began, her voice warm but authoritative. "Welcome to the Bridge to Employment program. I'm Sarah Thompson, the director here at Harlem Community Outreach." As she outlined the program, job training, interview preparation, placement assistance, Jason's attention remained unwavering. When Sarah mentioned their corporate partners, including Miller Enterprises, a flicker of recognition crossed his face. After the orientation, as the others filed out, Jason approached Sarah. "Ms. Thompson, I wanted to thank you for the opportunity." Sarah smiled. "You can thank me by making the most of it, Jason." "I will," he promised. I noticed you mentioned Miller Enterprises. I've heard they're tough to work for." Sarah's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Every workplace has its challenges, but Miller offers good entry-level positions with advancement potential. That's rare these days." Jason nodded, processing her careful response. "I understand. I'm grateful for any opportunity." Sarah studied him, recognizing something familiar in his cautious optimism. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" Jason's posture stiffened. "No more than anyone else here." "Maybe," Sarah conceded. "But not everyone develops your level of awareness. It takes certain experiences to create that kind of vigilance." For a moment, Jason's carefully maintained facade cracked, revealing a glimpse of raw vulnerability. Then it was gone, replaced by a polite smile. "I should go prepare for tomorrow's workshop. Thank you again, Ms. Thompson." As Jason left, Sarah found herself hoping Miller Enterprises would be different for him than it had been for her. Across town, Caroline Miller paced, the floor of her penthouse office, phone pressed to her ear. "I don't care what it takes, Doctor. Find something that works faster without being detectable." On the other end of the line, Dr. Matthew Preston sighed. "Caroline, we've been over this. The current regimen is already pushing the boundaries of what's safe. Any more aggressive and we risk permanent damage or—" "I'm not paying you for excuses," Caroline cut in, her voice glacial. "My father is still having moments of clarity that are inconvenient. The Mitchell acquisition closes in 3 weeks. I need him compliant by then. The human brain isn't a light switch, Caroline. Your father's remarkable constitution is fighting the effects. If you want him to sign over control without raising suspicions, patience is our best strategy." Caroline stopped at her window, gazing out at the city her father had taught her to conquer. "3 weeks, Doctor. Make it happen." She ended the call and turned to the man sitting silently on her couch. Michael Foster, her father's personal assistant for the past year, watched her with calculating eyes. "How is he today?" Caroline asked. Michael's lips curved into a cold smile. "Confused, agitated. The new combination in his morning coffee worked well. He tried to fire me twice before lunch, then couldn't remember doing it." Caroline nodded, satisfaction evident in her posture. "And the board members?" Most are concerned about his health, but too afraid to mention it directly. Walters remains loyal, though. He's been suggesting your father seek a second opinion. Caroline's expression darkened. Walter has outlived his usefulness. Once the acquisition closes, will accelerate his retirement plans. Michael stood, closing the distance between them with practiced ease. At 35, he combined the sharp mind of a strategist with the ruthless ambition that had initially attracted Caroline. Their relationship, begun as a calculated alliance, had evolved into something more complex. Not quite love, but a powerful recognition of kindred spirits. "You're so close now," he murmured, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Everything you've worked for. Everything you deserve." Caroline leaned into his touch, allowing herself a rare moment of vulnerability. "He never saw me, Michael. No matter what I achieved, it was never enough. I was never enough." 25. Years earlier, 10-year-old Caroline had stood in the doorway of her father's home office, report card clutched in her small hands. Straight A's, the teacher's comments glowing with praise. "Daddy," she'd called, excitement bubbling in her chest. "Look what I got." Robert had barely glanced up from his paperwork. "That's nice, sweetheart, just put it on my desk." "But don't you want to see? Ms. Abernathy says I'm the best student she's had in 15 years of teaching." Robert had sighed, checking his watch. "Caroline, I'm in the middle of a crucial deal. We'll discuss your grades later." Later never came. Neither did acknowledgement of her debate team victories, her early admission to Yale, or her MBA from Harvard. Each achievement was met with the same response: a distracted nod, a perfunctory, "Good job," and the implicit message that it was simply expected, not exceptional. In the present, Caroline pulled away from Michael, composure reinstated. "We're not doing this for validation. We're doing it because he's losing his edge. The company needs new leadership." Michael smiled, recognizing the lie but respecting her need for it. "Of course. It's just business." Across the city, Robert Miller sat in his private doctor's office, frustration evident in every line of his body. "I'm telling you, James, something isn't right," he insisted, using the familiar address that 30 years, her friendship had earned Dr. James Harrison. "These aren't normal symptoms of aging." Dr. Harrison, a distinguished man in his late 60s, studied his oldest friend with concern. "Your tests show some unusual patterns, Rob, but nothing conclusive. The symptoms you're describing, confusion, memory lapses, dizziness, could be stress-related or early cognitive decline." "Or something else entirely," Robert muttered. "Have you tested for unusual substances, toxins, something that wouldn't show up in standard panels?" Dr. Harrison frowned. "You think you're being poisoned, Rob? That's paranoid, is it?" Robert leaned forward, lowering his voice despite being in a private room. 3 months ago, I was in perfect health. I could quote financial reports from memory. Work 16-hour days without fatigue. Now, I can barely get through a board meeting without Caroline covering for me." "Speaking of Caroline," Dr. Harrison said carefully, "she's been quite concerned. She calls me almost daily for updates on your condition." Robert's eyes narrowed. "Does she? And what exactly does she want to know?" "Standard things. Your prognosis, treatment options, how to manage your care. And how to manage my company while I'm incapacitated," Robert added bitterly. Dr. Harrison sighed. "Rob, I've known you both for decades. Caroline is ambitious, yes, but she's your daughter. She loves you." Robert stared out the window, doubt etching lines in his weathered face. "Does she? Or does she love what I've built, what she stands to inherit?" "Those are dark thoughts, old friend." "Dark times breed dark thoughts, James." Robert stood, straightening his suit jacket with deliberate precision. "Run those additional tests quietly, and don't mention them to Caroline." Dr. Harrison hesitated before nodding. "I'll be discreet. But Rob, consider this. If I find nothing, will you accept that perhaps your suspicions are unfounded?" Robert's expression was grim. "If you find nothing, James, it only means we haven't looked in the right places yet." As Robert's driver helped him into the back of the Bentley, he felt the familiar fog descending over his mind, the confusion that had become his unwelcome companion. He gripped his leather portfolio tightly, anchoring himself to reality as the city blurred outside his window. "Where to, sir?" the driver asked. For a terrifying moment, Robert couldn't remember his own address. Panic rose in his throat as he searched his fragmenting mind for the information that should be automatic. "Sir?" the driver prompted again, concern evident in his voice. "Home," Robert managed, the word feeling foreign on his tongue. "Take me home." As the car pulled into traffic, Robert closed his eyes, fighting against the fog. Something was wrong, something beyond age or stress or ordinary illness. And somehow, deep in his heart, he knew that the answer to his mysterious decline was closer than anyone suspected. Robert Miller stared at the breakfast tray Michael had placed before him, the smell of coffee and toast turning his stomach. These morning meals had become a strange battlefield, a daily ritual where he fought to maintain control over his diminishing faculties. "Your medication, sir," Michael said, placing 3 pills beside the orange juice. "Miss Caroline insisted I watch. You take them this time." Robert's gaze shifted from the pills to Michael's impassive face. In the 6 months since Caroline had hired him, Robert had never fully warmed to the man. Something about his perfect efficiency felt mechanical, lacking the human touch that his previous assistant of 20 years had possessed. Did she now? Robert picked up the pills, studying them. "And what exactly are these for, Michael? Since apparently I can't be trusted to remember my own medical regimen." Michael's smile didn't reach his eyes. "The blue one is for blood pressure, the white for cognitive support, and the yellow is the new anti-anxiety medication Dr. Preston prescribed last week." Robert frowned. This mysterious Dr. Preston again, a doctor he had no memory of meeting despite Caroline's insistence. "I don't recall feeling anxious." "The doctor said that's part of the condition, sir. Lack of awareness of your own symptoms." How convenient, Robert thought. He pretended to place the pills in his mouth, then sipped his orange juice. With a sleight of hand perfected over the past week, he palmed the medication instead of swallowing. "Satisfied?" he asked, opening his empty mouth for inspection. Michael nodded, apparently convinced. "Ms. Caroline will be pleased. She's very concerned about your adherence to the treatment plan." "I'm sure she is," Robert murmured. As soon as Michael left, he flushed the pills down the toilet. This small act of rebellion had become his morning ritual. After a week of skipping the mysterious medications, Robert had noticed his mind clearing incrementally. The constant fog was lifting, though unpredictably, moments of sharp clarity alternating with episodes of disorientation. Whatever was happening to him, he was increasingly convinced it was not natural cognitive decline. He dressed carefully, choosing a suit that hung slightly loose on his frame, evidence of the weight he'd lost during his mysterious illness. Today was important. Today he would begin his own investigation. Downstairs, his driver waited by the Bentley. "Where to, Mr. Miller?" "Brooklyn. There's an address in my phone." Robert had researched James Harrison's recommended pharmacologist in secret, using his old flip phone rather than his monitored smartphone. Dr. Sophia Chen had no connections to Miller Enterprises or to any of his daughter's associates. In her modest office in Brooklyn Heights, Dr. Chen listened intently as Robert described his symptoms, the timing of their onset, and his suspicions. "So you believe someone might be administering substances to induce these cognitive symptoms?" she asked, her expression neutral and professional. "I know how it sounds," Robert admitted. "Paranoid, delusional even. But I've built a multi-billion-dollar company by trusting my instincts, and my instincts tell me this isn't natural." "Doctor?" Chen nodded thoughtfully. "Actually, induced cognitive impairment isn't as far-fetched as you might think. Certain medications, when misused or combined improperly, can create symptoms that mimic dementia or neurological disorders." Hope flared in Robert's chest. "Can you test for such substances?" "We can try. I'll need blood and urine samples, and it would be helpful to have samples of the medications you've been prescribed." She hesitated. "Mr. Miller, if your suspicions are correct, this is a serious matter. Have you considered involving the authorities? Robert's expression hardened. Not yet. First, I need proof, and I need to understand why. Though he didn't voice it aloud, Robert already had his suspicions about the why. The Mitchell acquisition was days away from closing, a deal that would cement Miller Enterprises as the dominant force in East Coast real estate. Once finalized, his controlling interest in the company would be worth billions more. If he were declared mentally incompetent, control would pass to his only heir, Caroline. Back at Miller Tower, Jason had been transferred to the executive floor maintenance team, a promotion that raised eyebrows given his short tenure. What no one knew was that Frank had engineered the move after Jason confided his concerns about Robert Miller's condition. Keep your eyes and ears open, kid, Frank had advised. If something shady is happening to the old man, someone needs to be watching. Today, Jason was replacing light fixtures in the executive conference room when Caroline and Michael entered, deep in conversation. Preston is getting nervous, Caroline was saying, her voice low. He's worried about the long-term effects of the regimen. Michael scoffed. Since when does Preston have a conscience? He's been well compensated for his expertise. It's not conscience, it's self-preservation. If anything happens to my father that can't be explained by natural causes, Preston knows he'll be the first person investigators look at. Jason remained motionless on the ladder, barely breathing as the conversation continued below him. We only need another week, Michael reassured her. Once the Mitchell papers are signed, your position will be secure. The board already sees you as the de facto CEO. Caroline sighed, frustration evident in her tone. Walter Green is still a problem. He's been trying to get my father alone, suggesting they meet at his club where I can't manage the conversation. Walter is the past, you are the future. The board knows it, the market knows it. Even your father, in his increasingly rare moments of clarity, knows it. There was a pause, then the sound of Caroline's heels clicking on the marble floor as she paced. I saw him this morning before his doctor's appointment, which, by the way, wasn't on any schedule I approved. He seemed sharper, more present. Fluctuations are normal with these conditions, Michael replied smoothly. One good day doesn't indicate recovery. Unless he's not taking his medication, Caroline said. Did you watch him swallow the pills this morning? Of course, opened his mouth afterward just like you instructed. Jason's hand slipped slightly on the fixture he was installing, causing a soft metallic clink. Both Caroline and Michael looked up instantly. Maintenance, Jason explained, gesturing to the light. Almost finished. Caroline's eyes narrowed. You're that new hire, Jason, right? I keep seeing you around the executive floor. Yes, ma'am, I was assigned to this section last week. How convenient, she murmured, exchanging a look with Michael. Make sure you're thorough. We can't have anything malfunctioning during tomorrow's board meeting. Yes, ma'am, Jason responded, keeping his expression neutral despite the chill that ran down his spine at her tone. After they left, Jason finished the installation with shaking hands, then hurried to the service elevator. He needed to talk to Sarah immediately. At the community center, he found her in the middle of a mentoring session with a group of teenagers. When she saw his face, she quickly assigned the group a task and pulled Jason into her office. What happened? She asked, closing the door. Jason relayed the conversation he'd overheard, watching Sarah's expression grow increasingly grave. This is worse than I thought, she said when he finished. If Caroline is drugging her father to impair his judgment during the Mitchell acquisition, it's not just unethical, it's criminal, Jason finished. But who would believe us? It's the word of a maintenance guy and a community center director against one of the most powerful families in New York. Sarah paced the small office, thinking, we need evidence, concrete proof that would stand up to scrutiny. Like what? The actual medications? Recordings of their conversations? Both, ideally. Sarah stopped pacing, a determined look settling on her features. I still have friends at Miller Enterprises, people who were loyal to Robert and who've been sidelined by Caroline's restructuring, people who might be willing to help. Jason leaned forward. I can access most areas of the building with my maintenance credentials. If I knew what to look for, where to look. Sarah considered this. It's risky. If Caroline suspects you're investigating her. What choice do we have? Jason asked quietly. From what I overheard, they're planning to have Mr. Miller sign over control at tomorrow's board meeting. Once that happens, it's game over. Sarah studied him intently. Why do you care so much, Jason? You barely know Robert Miller. Jason was silent for a moment, wrestling with memories he usually kept buried. When I was 16, my mother got sick, cancer. The insurance company denied our claims, saying her condition was pre-existing. We lost everything, our house, our savings, eventually her life. He paused, gathering himself. The insurance company was a subsidiary of Blackwood Financial. Their CEO had a reputation like Robert Miller, tough but fair. I always wondered if he had known what was happening in his company, if someone had been brave enough to tell him the truth about how his policies were being implemented. Maybe things would have been different. Sarah's expression softened with understanding. So this is about redemption, doing now what you wish someone had done then. Maybe, Jason admitted, or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe I just can't stand by and watch someone being betrayed by the person who should protect them most. Sarah nodded slowly. All right, let's do this. But we need to be smart, methodical. For the next hour, they formulated a plan. Sarah would contact her old colleagues who might be sympathetic to Robert's situation. Jason would use his access to gather evidence, photographs of medications, recordings of conversations if possible. They would build a case, find a way to get the information directly to Robert, bypassing the handlers his daughter had surrounded him with. As Jason prepared to leave, Sarah stopped him. Be careful. Caroline Miller didn't get where she is by being careless. If she catches even a hint of what we're doing. I know, Jason said grimly, but someone has to stand up to her. Why not us? The question hung in the air between them, both inspiring and ominous in its implications. Across town, Robert Miller sat in his study, reviewing the preliminary results Dr. Chen had sent via secure courier. The report contained medical terminology he didn't fully understand, but the conclusion was clear. Traces of several substances had been found in his system, substances that, in combination, could induce cognitive impairment, confusion, and memory loss. It wasn't definitive proof. The report noted that more comprehensive testing was needed, but it was enough to confirm his suspicions. Someone was drugging him, and given the timing, the access needed, and the potential motive, that someone was almost certainly his daughter. The realization should have devastated him. Instead, Robert felt a cold, clarifying anger. The business world had taught him many lessons over the decades, but none more important than this. Betrayal was always a possibility, even from those closest to you. He reached for his secure phone to call Dr. Chen for a follow-up appointment, but hesitated when he heard footsteps approaching his study. Quickly, he hid the report in a hollowed-out book on his shelf, a hiding place from his childhood that had served him well over the years. The door opened to reveal Caroline, impeccably dressed as always. "Dad, I thought you'd be resting before dinner." Robert forced a smile, allowing a slight tremor into his hand for effect. "Just reviewing some old files. Nostalgia, I suppose." Caroline crossed the room, concern etched on her features. "You shouldn't strain yourself. The doctor said mental exertion could trigger episodes." "Did he?" Robert murmured, watching his daughter carefully. "I must have forgotten that advice." Caroline smiled indulgently. "That's why I'm here to remind you. Now, why don't we get you settled before dinner? Tomorrow's board meeting is important. You'll want to be at your best." As she helped him from his chair, her touch gentle but firm, Robert played along, pretending greater weakness than he felt. "The Mitchell acquisition? Is that tomorrow?" "Yes, Dad, the culmination of your vision, but don't worry, I've prepared everything. All you need to do is sign where indicated." Robert nodded docilely, while internally his mind raced with plans and contingencies. "I'm lucky to have you, Caroline." "Yes," she agreed, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "You are." The morning of the board meeting dawned with a gray drizzle that shrouded the Manhattan skyline in mist. Jason arrived at Miller Tower an hour earlier than usual. his maintenance uniform concealing a small digital voice recorder Sarah had provided. His heart hammered against his ribs as he badged through security, half expecting alarms to sound or guards to stop him. Instead, the usual nod from the security guard, the familiar hum of the service elevator. Nothing to indicate that today was different, that today he was crossing a line from observer to active participant in the drama unfolding in the Miller family. His first task was legitimate, replacing air filters in the executive suite. But as he worked in Robert Miller's office, he carefully placed the tiny recorder under the massive mahogany desk, adhering it with a special putty that would keep it secure yet retrievable. Just as he finished, the office door opened. Jason froze, then relaxed slightly when he saw it was only Frank. "Jesus, kid, you nearly gave me a heart attack," Frank whispered, closing the door behind him. "What are you doing here so early?" Jason gestured to the air filters. Scheduled maintenance. Didn't want to disrupt the big meeting later. Frank's eyes narrowed slightly, not quite believing the explanation, but not challenging it either. "Listen, something's happening today. Security protocols have been increased, and I overheard that witch Caroline telling IT to restrict access to the executive floor after 10 a.m. Jason's pulse quickened. "The board meeting isn't until 2 p.m. "Exactly. Whatever she's planning, she's creating a controlled environment." Frank glanced nervously at the door. "I shouldn't be telling you this, but I like the old man. He gave me a chance when no one else would. If you're trying to help him," he trailed off, leaving the implication hanging. Jason made a split-second decision to trust Frank. "I need access to Caroline's office and to wherever they keep the medications they're giving Mr. Miller." Frank didn't look surprised. "So you know about that, huh? Can't say I'm shocked. The man went from sharp as a tack to confused as my grandpa in less than 6 months." He pulled out a master key card. "This will get you into her office. As for the meds, check Michael Foster's desk. Bottom right drawer, he's the one who handles that particular task." Jason took the key card, stunned by Frank's readiness to help. "Why are you doing this?" Frank's weathered face hardened. 30 years I've worked here. 30 years of loyalty. Last month I found out I'm on Caroline's redundancy list once she takes full control. After 3 decades, I'm redundant." He spat the word. "So you do whatever you need to do, kid. Just be careful." After Frank left, Jason moved quickly to Michael's office down the hall. The key card worked as promised, giving him access to the eerily pristine space. Unlike most executive offices, which contained personal touches, photos, awards, mementos, Michael's was sterile, more like a stage set than a workplace. The bottom right drawer was locked, but Jason's background had given him skills beyond those on his resume. 30 seconds with a paperclip and the lock surrendered. Inside, he found what he was looking for: a small case containing vials, syringes, and pill bottles, all neatly organized. Jason quickly photographed everything with his phone, paying special attention to the labels. Most were prescription medications, but 2 of the vials had only numerical designations. No pharmaceutical names, no dosage instructions. Those he photographed from multiple angles before carefully returning everything exactly as he'd found it. He was about to leave when he noticed a leather-bound notebook, partially hidden beneath some files. Opening it revealed handwritten notes tracking RM's condition over the past 6 months. Entries detailed dosage adjustments, behavioral observations, and projected timelines. The most recent entry, dated yesterday, read, "Final preparation complete. Subject adequately compromised for transfer procedure. See confirms legal documents prepared for signing." Jason's blood ran cold as he photographed these pages. This wasn't just manipulation. It was a methodically executed plan to strip Robert Miller of his company and possibly his freedom. As he closed the drawer and prepared to leave, the office door suddenly opened. Michael Foster stood in the doorway, his expression shifting from surprise to cold calculation. "Mr. Reynolds, this is unexpected." Michael stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Maintenance issues in my office?" Jason forced a casual shrug. "Air filter replacement, building-wide directive before the big meeting today." Michael's eyes flicked to the drawer Jason had just closed, then back to his face. Is that so? Strange that I wasn't notified. Just following orders, sir. Jason moved toward the door, toolkit in hand. All done here. Michael didn't step aside. What did you see in that drawer, Jason? The use of his first name, spoken with such quiet menace, confirmed that his discovery hadn't gone unnoticed. Jason calculated his options: deny, deflect, or confront. Nothing, sir, just looking for the air filter access panel. Some offices have them in different locations. Michael smiled, a predator's smile that never reached his eyes. You know, Caroline mentioned you've been turning up in interesting places lately. Around her father, during private conversations. She thought I was being paranoid when I suggested having you watched. Perhaps I wasn't paranoid enough. Jason tensed, preparing for what? Violence seemed unlikely in the corporate setting, but the threat in Michael's voice was unmistakable. I think we should continue this conversation with HR, Michael continued smoothly. They'll be very interested in your maintenance techniques. Before Jason could respond, the office phone rang. Michael hesitated, then moved to answer it, keeping his eyes on Jason. Foster speaking. His expression changed as he listened. Now? But the preparation... Yes, I understand. I'll be right there. He hung up, visibly annoyed. It seems we'll have to postpone our discussion. Mr. Miller is having an episode and demanding my presence. He gestured toward the door. After. You, Mr. Reynolds, and do stay available. We're not finished. Jason walked out, acutely aware of Michael's gaze boring into his back. Once in the hallway, he headed directly for the service elevator, fighting the urge to run. He needed to warn Sarah, to secure the evidence he'd already gathered before. Michael could act on his suspicions. Meanwhile, in his penthouse, Robert Miller was putting on a performance worthy of his brief collegiate theater days. When Caroline had arrived with his morning medication, he'd pretended to take it, then immediately begun exhibiting exaggerated symptoms, confusion, agitation, demanding Michael's presence for important business that couldn't wait. Now, as Michael rushed in, Robert was sitting in his bathrobe, hair disheveled, staring vacantly at a financial report held upside down. Mr. Miller, Michael approached cautiously. Caroline said you were asking for me. Robert looked up, allowing his eyes to drift slightly out of focus. Michael, yes, the documents. I need to sign the documents. Michael exchanged a glance with Caroline, who stood by the window, arms crossed. The board meeting isn't until this afternoon, sir. The documents will be ready then. No! Robert slammed his hand on the table with unexpected force. Now! I want to sign them now, before I forget again. Caroline stepped forward, her voice soothing. Dad, we have a process to follow. The board needs to be present for the transfer to be official. Robert fixed her with a surprisingly lucid stare. Then call them all now. I'm tired, Caroline. Tired of fighting this fog in my mind. I want it done. Michael pulled Caroline aside, speaking in hushed tones. This could work in our favor. If he's this eager to sign, we could have the lawyers bring the papers here, have it witnessed properly. The board could attend virtually. Caroline considered this, studying her father with narrowed eyes. He's more agitated than usual. Are you sure the medication is working correctly? Perhaps it's working too well, Michael suggested. The dosage might be causing these fluctuations, but it might give us the perfect opportunity to complete the transfer under controlled conditions, rather than risking a scene at the board meeting. Caroline nodded slowly. Make the arrangements. I want this done within the hour. And double-check that the language is airtight, no room for challenges later. As they discussed the logistics, Robert maintained his vacant expression while internally calculating his next moves. The performance had bought him time and was about to give him exactly what he needed, a gathering of witnesses who would see firsthand what was happening to him. At the community center, Sarah was meeting with 3 former Miller Enterprises, employees who had been ousted during Caroline's restructuring. All had been loyal to Robert for decades, and all harbored resentments toward his daughter. What exactly are you suggesting, Sarah? Asked Eleanor Voss, former head of legal compliance. That Caroline Miller is drugging her own father to take control of the company? I know how it sounds, Sarah admitted, but Jason has seen evidence and her phone buzzed with a text from Jason. Compromised. Foster caught me. Coming to you with evidence, they're accelerating the plan. Sarah's heart sank. We're out of time. They're moving to have Robert sign over control today, possibly within hours. William Chen, who had been Robert's chief financial officer for 15 years before Caroline replaced him with her own choice, leaned forward. Even if what you're saying is true, what can we do? Caroline has the board in her pocket, and Robert's apparent cognitive decline gives her all the justification she needs. We need to get to Robert directly, Sarah insisted. Show him the evidence. Help him understand what's happening to him. Impossible, said Marcus Johnson, former head of security. Caroline has him surrounded by people loyal to her. No one gets access without her approval. Sarah's mind raced, seeking a solution. What about Walter Green? Jason mentioned he's still loyal to Robert. Eleanor nodded slowly. Walter and Robert go back 50 years. If anyone could get past Caroline's barriers, it's him. Then that's our play, Sarah decided. We contact Walter, show him what we have, and hope he can get to Robert before the papers are signed. As they strategized, Jason burst into the office, breathless and disheveled. They know. Michael caught me searching his office. I got out before security could stop me, but they'll be looking for me. He placed his phone on the desk, pulling up the photos he'd taken. But I got what we needed. Look at this. The group, huddled around the phone, examining the images of medications and the damning notebook entries. Eleanor's legal mind immediately grasped the implications. This is clearly documented intent to incapacitate. The timeline, the dosage adjustments, the coordination with legal documents, it's all here. And these, Jason pointed to the unmarked vials, aren't standard pharmaceuticals. We need to get them analyzed to know exactly what they've been giving him. Marcus studied the photos with a professional eye. This is enough to raise serious questions, but Caroline will have explanations ready. She'll claim it's all part of his legitimate treatment plan. What about the recording device? Sarah asked. Did you place it? Jason nodded. In his office, but that won't help us today. We'd need to retrieve it later. William, who had been quietly thinking, finally spoke up. I might have a solution. The Mitchell acquisition closing, it's not just a company matter. It involves significant real estate holdings, which means city permits, environmental certifications, public disclosures. How does that help us? Jason asked. William smiled grimly. Because I still have contacts at the City Planning Commission. If certain irregularities in the Mitchell properties were to suddenly require immediate attention, environmental concerns, permit issues, it could delay the closing. And without the closing, the transfer of power loses its immediate urgency. Hope flared in Sarah's eyes. How quickly could you make that happen? With a few phone calls? By noon. But it would only buy us a day, maybe two. That might be enough, Sarah decided. Eleanor, can you reach Walter Green? Eleanor nodded. He's been calling me regularly since my dismissal. He doesn't trust. What's happening at Miller Enterprises? Good. Marcus, we need security expertise. If we get a chance to approach Robert, what's our best option? The former security chief considered this. The most vulnerable point would be during transit. Once he's in the tower, Caroline's system makes access nearly impossible without credentials. Sarah turned to Jason. And you? You're exposed now. Michael will have security looking for you. Jason's expression hardened with resolve. I'll do whatever it takes. Mr. Miller saved me from the streets, gave me a chance when no one else would. I'm not abandoning him now. The determination in his voice silenced the room. Here was this young man with so little to his name, willing to risk everything for a principle, for a sense of justice that transcended class and circumstance. Sarah reached out, squeezing his shoulder. We'll do this together, all of us. As they finalized their plan across town, Robert Miller was watching as lawyers set up equipment for the emergency board meeting. He maintained his performance of docile confusion, allowing Caroline to guide him, to speak for him when questions arose. But beneath the vacant expression, His mind was clear and focused. The medications he'd been secretly disposing of had nearly cleared his system. Dr. Chen's preliminary tests had confirmed his suspicions. Now he needed only to survive this meeting without signing away his life's work, to buy time until allies could reach him. "Dad," Caroline said, guiding him to his chair at the head of the table. "The board members will be joining us virtually in a few minutes. Then Michael will present the documents for the Mitchell acquisition and the leadership transition. All you need to do is sign where indicated. Do you understand?" Robert nodded, vaguely. "Sign the papers. Yes, I understand." Caroline smiled, satisfied with his apparent compliance. "Good. This is for the best, Dad. You built something magnificent. Now let me protect it for you." As she turned away to speak with the lawyers, Robert caught sight of Michael watching him intently from across the room. There was suspicion in that gaze, a calculating assessment that suggested Michael wasn't entirely convinced by Robert's performance. Their eyes met, and for an instant, Robert allowed his mask to slip, showing the sharp intelligence and cold anger that had made him a legend in business. Michael's expression shifted to alarm, then quickly smoothed into professional neutrality. The game was escalating. The next few hours would determine not just the fate of Miller Enterprises, but Robert's freedom and legacy. As the video conference screens flickered to life around him, displaying the faces of board members eager to witness this historic transition, Robert settled deeper into his role. Let them think him diminished, confused, ready to surrender control. The greatest advantage in any negotiation was being underestimated, and Robert Miller had spent a lifetime turning others' underestimation into his victory. The virtual board meeting had been underway for 20 minutes, with Caroline masterfully guiding the discussion. She stood at the head of the table, projecting confidence and competence as she outlined the final details of the Mitchell acquisition. "As you can see from the projections," she was saying, gesturing to charts displayed on the screens, "this acquisition positions Miller Enterprises to dominate the Eastern Seaboard real estate market for the next decade." The board members nodded appreciatively, their faces solemn on the video screen surrounding the conference room. Only Walter Green appeared less than enthusiastic, his bushy eyebrows drawn together in concern as he watched Robert, who sat quietly beside Caroline, occasionally nodding vaguely. "Before we proceed to the signing," Walter interrupted, his voice carrying authority despite the digital medium, "I'd like to hear directly from Robert about his vision for the company post-acquisition." Caroline's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Walter, as we discussed privately, my father is having one of his more difficult days. That's why we moved the meeting forward and arranged this virtual format to accommodate his condition, while still completing this crucial business." "Nevertheless," Walter persisted, "this represents the largest shift in company leadership since its founding. I believe we all deserve to hear from the man who built Miller Enterprises before such a momentous transition." Robert recognized the lifeline Walter was extending and seized it, allowing a moment of apparent clarity to break through his performance. "Walter is right," he said, his voice stronger than it had been all day. "This company has been my life's work. I should speak to its future." Caroline couldn't object without appearing to silence her father in front of the board. She nodded graciously, though tension radiated from her rigid posture. Robert rose slowly, leaning on the table for support, partly performance, partly genuine weakness after months of being drugged. "The Mitchell acquisition represents everything I've worked toward," he began, his voice gaining strength with each word. "Expansion based on solid fundamentals, strategic positioning for long-term growth rather than short-term profits." He paused, looking directly into the camera that captured his image for the board members. "But a company is more than its balance sheet. It's its people, its institutional knowledge, its ethics and values." Caroline shifted uncomfortably beside him. Michael, standing by the door, checked his watch with visible impatience. "Which is why," Robert continued, "I find myself troubled by certain recent management decisions, mass layoffs of experienced personnel, aggressive cost-cutting that sacrifices quality. a shift toward viewing employees as expendable resources rather than valuable assets. The board members exchanged glances on their screens. This wasn't the docile handover they had been led to expect. "Dad," Caroline interjected smoothly, "perhaps we should focus on the acquisition specifics rather than broader management philosophy. The board is busy, and the board should be very interested in management philosophy," Robert countered. "Since it determines the company's future." He turned to face her directly. "Especially when that management may not have the company's best interests at heart." A hushed tension fell over the room. Caroline's face remained professionally composed, but her eyes flashed with warning. "What my father means," she attempted to recover, "is that without proper succession planning, even the best companies can falter, which is precisely why today's leadership transition is so important." "Is it a transition?" Robert asked quietly, looking around at the board members' faces, "or a hostile takeover?" Before Caroline could respond, the conference room door burst open. A flustered assistant rushed in, followed by a stern-looking woman in a business suit who Robert didn't recognize. "Ms. Miller," the assistant stammered, "I'm so sorry for the interruption, but Ms. Voss insisted it was urgent." "Eleanor!" Walter's voice came sharply through the speakers as he recognized his former colleague. Eleanor Voss strode purposefully into the room, ignoring Caroline's outraged expression. "Forgive the intrusion, but this matter cannot wait." She placed a thick folder on the conference table. "I have documentation suggesting serious ethical and potentially legal violations related to the Mitchell acquisition and the proposed leadership transition." Caroline's professional mask slipped momentarily, revealing pure fury before she recovered. "This is outrageous. Security!" "Before anyone calls security," Eleanor continued calmly, "the board should know that copies of these documents have already been sent to each member's private email addresses, as well as to select media outlets, to be released if I don't check in hourly." Robert felt a surge of hope at this unexpected alliance. Eleanor had been one of his most trusted executives before Caroline had engineered her dismissal. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded Philip Saunders, the board chairman, from his video screen. "The meaning, Mr. Chairman," Eleanor replied, opening the folder, "is that there appears to be a coordinated effort to manipulate Mr. Miller's health in order to force a change in company control." Gasps and murmurs erupted from the screens. Michael moved toward Eleanor, but Walter's commanding voice froze him in place. "Let her speak, Foster. If these allegations are baseless, there's no harm in hearing them." Eleanor removed several photographs from the folder, the images Jason had taken of the medications and notebook. These were discovered in Michael Foster's office this morning. They document a systematic program of administering unmarked substances to Robert Miller, coordinated with legal preparations for today's transfer of power. Caroline laughed, the sound brittle and forced. "This is absurd. My father has been under legitimate medical care for cognitive decline. Any medications have been prescribed by licensed physicians." "Including Dr. Preston," Eleanor challenged, "a doctor whose medical license was suspended in 3 states for ethical violations? A doctor who coincidentally has received consulting fees from a shell company owned by Michael Foster." Robert turned to his daughter, allowing genuine pain to show on his face. "Caroline, what is she talking about?" Caroline ignored him, addressing the board directly. "These are malicious fabrications from disgruntled former employees. Helena Voss was terminated for performance issues. Now she's seeking revenge with these outlandish claims." "If they're outlandish," came a new voice from the doorway, "then you won't mind addressing them directly." Sarah Thompson stood there, Jason slightly behind her. She carried a small recorder in her hand. "This conversation was recorded in Michael Foster's office yesterday afternoon," she said, pressing play before security could intervene. Caroline's voice emerged from the device, crystal clear. "Preston is getting nervous. He's worried about the long-term effects of the regimen." Michael's recorded response followed. "Since when does Preston have a conscience? He's been well compensated for his expertise." The room fell silent as the damning exchange continued, concluding with Caroline's statement about accelerating their timeline once the Mitchell papers were signed. Robert stared at his daughter, Decades of business instinct warring with paternal disbelief. Why, he asked simply. Why would you do this? For the first time, Caroline seemed at a loss for words. The board members watched in stunned silence from their screens. Michael's hand moved toward his jacket pocket, but Marcus Johnson, who had entered quietly during the recording, stepped forward and shook his head in warning. Mr. Chairman, Walter Green said into the heavy silence, I move that we immediately suspend this meeting and the proposed leadership transition pending a full investigation of these allegations. Seconded, came several voices from the screens. Philip Saunders, visibly shaken, nodded. Motion carried. This meeting is suspended. No documents will be signed today. He looked directly at Robert. Robert, are you all right? Before Robert could answer, Caroline found her voice. This is a transparent attempt to derail a legitimate business transition. My father's condition has been documented by medical professionals. These allegations are supported by blood tests, Robert interrupted, pulling Dr. Chen's preliminary report from his jacket pocket. Tests that show substances in my system that match no prescribed medication I've ever been given. He turned to the board members. I am not well, it's true, but my condition has been deliberately induced, not by age or natural decline, but by my own daughter and the people she placed around me. The admission of vulnerability, something the legendary Robert Miller had never shown in a boardroom, shocked the directors into silence. Caroline's composure finally cracked. You have no idea what it took to build on your legacy, she exclaimed. The sacrifices I made while you ignored me, the nights I worked while you took the credit. Everything I did was to secure what you built. By poisoning me? Robert asked, quietly. By stealing my company rather than earning your place? I tried to earn it. Caroline's voice rose, years of repressed emotion breaking through her carefully constructed facade. Nothing was ever enough for you, no achievement, no sacrifice. I had to become invisible to be seen by you, had to become a reflection of you instead of myself. The raw pain in her voice struck Robert like a physical blow. In her distorted mirror, he suddenly saw his own failings as a father. The emotional distance, the impossible standards, the approval always just out of reach. Caroline, he began, his voice softer. But she wasn't finished. You built this company by being ruthless, by eliminating obstacles, by taking what you wanted. I just followed your example. The only difference is I got caught. Security personnel had finally arrived, hovering uncertainly at the doorway. Michael was backing slowly toward a side exit, sensing the collapse of their carefully constructed plan. This meeting is adjourned, Chairman Saunders announced firmly. Security will escort Ms. Miller and Mr. Foster to separate conference rooms, where they will remain until proper authorities can be notified. As security moved toward Caroline, Robert held up his hand. Wait. He turned to his daughter, seeing not the polished executive, but the little girl who had once waited hours for him to come home, homework perfect on the table, achievements unacknowledged. The difference, he said quietly, isn't that you got caught, Caroline. The difference is that I never betrayed family. For all my flaws, and they are many, I never confused success with love. Something in Caroline's expression cracked, a hairline fracture in the armor she'd spent a lifetime building. For a moment she looked lost, a child again rather than a corporate warrior. Then the mask reasserted itself. Sentimentality, she said coolly, straightening her jacket. Your greatest weakness. She turned to the security personnel. There's no need for escorts. I know my way out. With dignity intact, she walked toward the door, pausing briefly beside Jason. You could have had everything, she murmured. I offered you a future. Jason met her gaze steadily. I chose one I could live with instead. As Caroline left, followed by security, Robert slumped in his chair, the strain of the confrontation taking its toll on his weakened body. Sarah moved quickly to his side. Mr. Miller, you need medical attention. The substances in your system will clear eventually, he finished, managing a tired smile. What I need now is to understand exactly what happened and how to ensure it never happens again. He looked up at the faces surrounding him, Walter on the screen, Eleanor, Marcus, William, Sarah, and Jason in the room. It seems I have more allies than I realized. Walter's voice came through the speakers, gruff with emotion. You have friends, Rob. Always have. Maybe it's time you started recognizing the difference between loyalty to your company and loyalty to you. Robert nodded slowly, the truth of those words settling into his bones. Perhaps you're right. He turned to Jason, studying the young man with new awareness. You risked everything, a job, a future, for someone you barely knew. Why? Jason shifted uncomfortably under the scrutiny. Because it was right. And because you gave me a chance when no one else would. That meant something. Robert extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Jason took it. Thank you, Robert said simply. As the board members signed off and the room gradually emptied, Robert remained seated, processing the day's revelations. The company he'd built, the daughter he'd failed, the strangers who had become allies. It was too much to absorb at once. Sarah lingered, concern evident in her expression. You should rest, Mr. Miller. Your system has been through a significant ordeal. Robert looked up at her, really seeing her for the first time. You're the community center director, the one Caroline had fired years ago. Yes, Sarah acknowledged, though I prefer to think I found my true calling afterward. Why help me after what my company did to you? Sarah's expression softened. Because holding grudges costs too much, and because sometimes the person who builds the system needs to see when it's broken. Robert considered this, then nodded slowly. I'd like to see this community center of yours when I'm stronger. Perhaps there's something I could learn there. Perhaps, Sarah agreed with a small smile. But first, recovery, one step at a time. As they prepared to leave, Jason paused in the doorway, looking back at the conference room where decades of power had been wielded, deals made, fortunes decided, and where today something more valuable than money had been exchanged. Truth, recognition, and the first tentative steps toward redemption. The empire Robert Miller had built still stood, but its foundations had been shaken, revealing both structural weaknesses and unexpected strengths. What would rise from this moment of crisis remained to be seen, but one thing was certain: it would be built differently than before, with greater awareness of the human cost of ambition and the true meaning of legacy. 6 months later, the Harlem Community Outreach Center buzzed with activity as volunteers prepared for its grand reopening. The once modest facility had been transformed, expanded to occupy the entire building, with new computer labs, classrooms, counseling offices, and a commercial kitchen for culinary training programs. Sarah moved through the space, directing last-minute preparations with the calm efficiency that had become her trademark. Though the center now operated with a substantial endowment from the newly established Miller Foundation, she remained its heart and soul, the visionary who saw potential where others saw only problems. The caterers need your approval on the final menu, called Dwayne, now the center's assistant director. And Channel 7 wants to know when Mr. Miller will arrive for the interview. Sarah checked her watch. Tell them 1 hour, and make sure the youth ambassadors are ready. They're the real stars today. In a quiet corner office, Jason sat reviewing applications for the center's expanded employment program. At 24, he carried himself with new confidence, his former wariness tempered by purpose and security. The suit he wore, simple but well-tailored, reflected his transition from maintenance worker to program director. A knock at the door interrupted his concentration. Robert Miller stood in the doorway, looking remarkably different from the frail figure of 6 months ago. Though still lean, he had regained weight and color. His silver hair was styled in a more relaxed fashion, and his trademark power suit had been replaced by well-cut slacks and a cashmere sweater. Am I interrupting? Robert asked. Jason smiled, setting aside the applications. Not at all, just reviewing candidates for the next cohort. Robert entered, glancing at the stack of papers. Anyone promising? All of them, Jason replied with conviction. That's the point of what we do here. Everyone deserves the chance to show what they're capable of. Robert nodded, the lesson one he had taken to heart during his own recovery. Sarah tells me you've declined the Scholarship to Columbia 3 times now. She's concerned you're sacrificing your own opportunities. Jason shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. The timing isn't right. The program needs stability during this expansion phase. The program, Robert observed mildly, or the people in it? Jason's silence confirmed the gentle accusation. Since the confrontation in the boardroom, he had thrown himself into the center's work with single-minded focus, as if trying to solve everyone else's problems might somehow make up for his inability to solve his own. You know, Robert continued, taking a seat across from Jason, I spent decades believing that sacrifice was the price of success. Personal relationships, family time, self-care, all expendable in service to the greater goal. His expression turned reflective. It took losing nearly everything to realize how flawed that calculation was. This is different, Jason insisted. These people need advocates. They need someone who understands their challenges firsthand. They need you at your best, Robert countered, not burning yourself out at 24 because you're afraid to accept good fortune when it comes your way. The truth of those words struck uncomfortably close to home. Jason had spent so long expecting the worst that prosperity and stability felt almost like threats, temporary conditions that would inevitably be snatched away. The scholarship will still be there next fall, Robert continued. A private endowment. Ensures that, but I won't push. Just consider that sometimes accepting help honors the giver as much as it benefits the receiver. Jason nodded slowly, recognizing the wisdom in Robert's words. I'll think about it. Good. Robert stood, checking his watch. Now, I believe we have a ribbon cutting to prepare for. Sarah will have both our heads if we're late. As they walked through the bustling center, Robert greeted staff and program participants with genuine interest, a far cry from the aloof executive he had once been. His recovery from the drugging had been gradual but steady, his mind clearing as the substances left his system. More surprising was his emotional evolution, the walls built over decades of cutthroat business, slowly dismantled by the genuine connections he found at the center. In the main hall, now transformed into an elegant reception space, Sarah was giving final instructions to the youth ambassadors, teens and young adults, who would share their stories with donors and media. Remember, she was saying, your experiences matter, your voices matter. This isn't about charity, it's about community and opportunity. Seeing Robert and Jason, she waved them over. Perfect timing. The mayor just arrived, and the press is setting up outside. Robert straightened his tie. Some habits died hard. How do I look? Sarah smiled, adjusting his slightly crooked collar. Like a man who found his second act. The three made their way to the center's entrance, where a crowd had gathered for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Board members from the Miller Foundation stood alongside community leaders, media representatives, and program participants. Walter Green, now chairman of the restructured Miller Enterprises, chatted amicably with Eleanor Voss, who had returned to the company as chief ethics officer. As they took their positions by the ceremonial ribbon, Robert found himself reflecting on the journey of the past 6 months. The legal consequences for Caroline and Michael had been significant but not crushing. Plea agreements that included restitution, community service, and probation rather than incarceration. Robert had insisted on this more measured approach, recognizing his own role in shaping his daughter's worldview. Their relationship remained fractured, but not severed. Monthly lunch meetings, awkward at first, later more genuine, had begun to bridge the chasm between them. Caroline was finding her own path now, starting a small consulting firm focused on helping family businesses navigate succession planning. Ethically. The irony wasn't lost on either of them, but there was also a fitting symmetry to it, lessons learned the hard way being transformed into wisdom that might help others. The mayor approached the microphone, beginning the ceremony with practiced political enthusiasm. Today we celebrate not just a building or a program, but a vision of what community investment can accomplish. As the speeches continued, Robert caught Sarah's eye across the podium. In the months since the boardroom confrontation, their initial wariness had evolved into profound respect, then friendship, and gradually something deeper, At 51 and 73, they made an unconventional pair, but they shared a commitment to second chances, for others and for themselves. And, now, the mayor announced, I'd like to invite Robert Miller, whose foundation made this expansion possible, to say a few words. Robert stepped to the microphone, looking out at the gathered crowd. 6 months ago, he would have delivered a polished, impersonal speech about corporate responsibility and philanthropic duty. Today, he set aside his prepared remarks. Thank you all for coming, he began. I'm supposed to tell you about the Miller Foundation's commitment to community development and the importance of creating economic opportunities in underserved neighborhoods. All of that is true and important. He paused, his gaze finding Jason. In the crowd, then Sarah beside him. But what's more important is what I've learned from the people in this building. That true wealth isn't measured in acquisitions or market share, but in human connection. That leadership isn't about control, but about empowerment. And that legacy isn't what you leave behind when you're gone. It's what you build with others. While you're here, he gestured to the center around them. This place exists because Sarah Thompson refused to be defined by setbacks, because Jason Reynolds chose integrity over personal gain, because dozens of young people wake up every day, determined to rewrite their stories despite the obstacles society places in their way. His voice grew stronger, more passionate than any boardroom presentation had ever inspired. I spent decades building towers of glass and steel, thinking they would stand as my legacy. But I've come to understand that the only lasting legacy is the one we build in others, the potential we help unlock, the dreams we help make possible. Robert looked directly at Sarah, his expression softening. Sometimes the most important journeys take us not to new destinations, but to people who help us see ourselves more clearly. People who remind us that it's never too late to become the person we might have been. The crowd applauded, moved by the unexpected vulnerability from a man once known for his ruthless business acumen. As Robert stepped back, Sarah squeezed his hand briefly, a gesture small enough to go unnoticed by most but significant in its affirmation. The ceremonial ribbon was cut, and the crowd moved inside for the reception. As donors mingled with program participants, Robert found himself drawn to a quiet corner where a display of photographs chronicled the center's history. One image in particular caught his attention: Sarah standing beside a much younger Jason, who clutched a GED certificate, with stunned pride on his face. The date showed it was taken 3 years earlier. His first major accomplishment after leaving the streets, Sarah said, joining him. He'd been in 7 foster homes, spent 2 years homeless, and still managed to complete his education. That's when I knew he was special. Robert studied the photograph, seeing the determined young man who would later risk everything to help a stranger. We all have our breaking points, he mused, moments when we choose who we're going to become. Jason chose courage. And you? Sarah asked. Robert considered the question. I chose to listen, finally, after 73 years of talking. He smiled ruefully. Slow learner. Better late than never, she replied, returning his smile. Across the room, Jason was engaged in animated conversation with a group of potential donors, his natural charisma and authentic passion for the center's mission drawing them in. Watching him, Robert felt a surge of paternal pride that caught him by surprise. He's going to accept the scholarship, Robert predicted, not because I convinced him, but because he's starting to believe he deserves it. About time, Sarah agreed. He's been taking care of everyone else for so long, he's forgotten how to accept good things for himself. Sound like anyone else we know? Robert asked with gentle humor. Sarah laughed softly. Touché, perhaps we're all works in progress. The celebration continued into the evening, a testament to the unlikely alliance that had formed 6 months earlier in a corporate boardroom. What had begun as a confrontation had evolved into collaboration, then community, a new kind of family built not on blood ties, but on shared values and mutual respect. As the last guests departed, Robert, Sarah, and Jason found themselves alone, in the center's courtyard, newly landscaped with benches and planters that would bloom in the spring. So, Robert said, breaking the comfortable silence, what's next for this place? For all of us? Sarah looked thoughtful. The employment program is just the beginning. I've been thinking about affordable housing initiatives, healthcare partnerships, maybe even a small business incubator. Dream bigger, Robert encouraged. The foundation has resources and, more importantly, influence. We can replicate this model in other neighborhoods, other cities. Jason, who had been quiet, finally spoke. I've been working on a proposal, a partnership, with the community college to create scholarship pathways for center participants. And, he hesitated, I'm thinking about accepting the Columbia offer, studying social policy while still working here part-time. That's wonderful, Sarah said, warmly. It's practical, Jason corrected, though his smile betrayed his excitement. If we're going to expand, we need people who understand both the lived experience and the policy frameworks. I could be that bridge. Robert nodded, recognizing the wisdom in the young man's approach. You know, Miller Enterprises has an executive trainee program that might interest you after graduation. We could use someone with your perspective in corporate leadership. One step at a time, Jason replied, though the idea clearly intrigued him. First, I need to prove I can handle college. You've handled far worse, Sarah reminded him gently. As the three walked toward the exit, their shadows stretched long in the evening light. Three unlikely allies whose paths had converged at a moment of crisis and remained intertwined through choice rather than circumstance. Outside, the Manhattan skyline glittered against the darkening sky, Miller Tower still prominent among the skyscrapers. Robert gazed at it briefly, no longer seeing it as the pinnacle of his achievement, but as one chapter in a longer, more complex story. Dinner at my place, he suggested. I think this calls for celebration. Only if you're not cooking, Sarah teased. Some skills can't be acquired overnight. Robert laughed, the sound unrestrained and genuine, so different from the calculated chuckles he had once deployed in boardrooms and business dinners. Fair enough. Takeout it is. As they walked toward the waiting car, Jason glanced back, at the center, at the place that had first offered him sanctuary and now provided purpose. The building stood solid and welcoming in the gathering dusk, its windows warmly lit against the night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new battles to fight. But tonight, in this moment, three people who had once been strangers found themselves bound by something stronger than blood or business, a shared vision of what the world could be when people chose compassion over power, connection over control. Ready? Robert asked, holding the car door. Jason nodded, turning away from the building to face whatever came next. Ready. And they were, not because the path ahead was clear or easy, but because they would walk it together, each bringing their unique strengths to the journey. The businessman who had learned that true wealth lay beyond balance sheets, the community leader who had transformed rejection into purpose, the young man who had found his voice after a lifetime of being silenced. Three unlikely allies, one shared mission, and a future limited only by their capacity to imagine it. As the car pulled away from the curb, Sarah reached for Robert's hand. He took it without hesitation, the gesture simple but profound. A testament to second chances, to unexpected connections, to the human capacity for growth and change at any age. In the rearview mirror, Miller Tower receded into the distance, still. Standing, still impressive, but no longer the measure of a man's worth. The true legacy was here in this car, in the lives touched and transformed in the community built from the ruins of betrayal. Not an ending but a beginning, not a conclusion but a continuation. The story of what happens when people find the courage to rewrite their narratives, to see beyond appearance and circumstance, to recognize that the most powerful transformations often begin with the simplest of choices. To see, to listen, to care, and in that caring, to create something that outlasts towers and fortunes,